Yeah, what is going on with the Atlanta Dream? I gotta be honest, they're looking bad. They're looking real bad. And if you're looking at how they've been playing, they're a half a game ahead of the Fever. Or is it one game over the Fever? They lost 3 games in a row, and like, they didn't break 75 points in 2 of them.
What if I told you that one of the most talented rosters in women's basketball is about to implode? Not because of injuries or bad luck, but because of contracts and inconsistency? And what if that implosion happens this offseason, forcing them to trade away the exact players they built this team around? That's not speculation. That's the reality Atlanta Dream fans are facing right now, and it's happening faster than anyone expected. Stick around, because this story gets darker.
How many good teams have the Dream beat this year? And I don't really even consider the Wings as in like top teams. You know what, Wings and Fever are okay. But they just lost to Seattle. Seattle. And like, I gotta give Angel Reese a bit of credit here because she's trying. Like, she was 1-6 to start the game and ended up going 3 of her next 4 to end it.
There's a moment in every season where a team's true identity gets exposed. For the Atlanta Dream, that moment just arrived, and it's uglier than anyone expected. They've lost 3 straight games, not close losses, not competitive defeats where they nearly pulled it off, complete collapses where they couldn't even break 75 points in 2 of them. Think about that for a second. A WNBA team in 2024 with multiple scoring options and draft pedigree struggling to reach 75 points. That's not a slump. That's a red flag waving in the middle of the court saying something fundamental is broken. Here's what makes it worse. They're only 1 game ahead of the Indiana Fever in the standings right now, the same Fever team they beat twice this season. The same Fever team that completely collapsed in both matchups, turned the ball over repeatedly, and basically handed Atlanta victories they didn't have to earn. So when you strip away those 2 wins against Indiana, suddenly the Dream's resume looks drastically different. They're sitting at 3 straight losses to legitimate competition. They're barely holding onto a playoff position. And most importantly, everyone's starting to ask the same uncomfortable question that nobody wants to voice out loud. How many actual quality wins does this team even have? But that's not even the scariest part. They're currently tied for the 3rd seed in the WNBA playoff race. Sounds good on the surface, right? Except they're simultaneously just 1 game away from dropping all the way down to 7th. That's not playoff positioning, that's chaos. That's a team that could plummet from a 3 seed to a 7 seed with 1 bad week. They're hanging by a thread, and the thread is getting thinner by the day.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
Like, Angel was a decent reason why they got back in this game, because they were down big. Like, if you just look at it here in the game cast, they're down basically the whole game. They're 12-0 down. They were given a 70% chance of winning. They go 12-0 down to start the game. That is mental. I didn't have a lead for 1 second in this game. They did not have a lead for 1 second.
Look at their recent schedule and you'll see exactly what I mean. They beat the Dallas Wings. Wings are middling at best. They beat Indiana twice. Fever are young and inexperienced, prone to complete mental breakdowns where they just fall apart. Outside of those games, where are the signature victories? Where are the wins that matter? They've lost to Seattle, a team that's been struggling all season long. They got dismantled by Las Vegas, a team with a legitimate identity on both ends of the floor. They can't seem to string together wins against anyone with a pulse. This isn't about facing superior competition and coming up short. This is about a team that feasts on inferior opponents and gets completely exposed the moment they face even moderate resistance. The gap between their performances against the Fever and their performances against everyone else is becoming impossible to ignore. It's like 2 completely different teams. One version plays against struggling teams and looks like a contender. The other version plays against legitimate competition and looks completely lost. That's the mark of a team that doesn't actually belong in the conversation with the league's elite, no matter what their record says right now. They're winning games they should win and losing games they should be competitive in. That's the definition of mediocrity, and mediocrity doesn't win championships.
Like, Medina Okot just struggled out there. Rhyne Howard looked great. Angel looked okay. Allisha Gray looked bad. And it's like, what is up with this Dream team? That if you're looking at it, it's very rare nowadays that Rhyne Howard and Allisha Gray play well. It is like, it's very, very rare that they both play well. And look, had the Fever not completely bottled those games, like, if the Fever didn't bottle those games, this team would be in the 7th seed. Like if they lost one of those Fever games, they would be in the 7th seed right now.
But let's zoom in on what happened in that Seattle game because it perfectly crystallizes everything wrong with this team right now. The Dream went home to Atlanta, they were favored, they had every reason to believe they'd come away with a victory. And within the first 2 minutes, they were down 12-0. Not 12-2, not 12-5, literally 12-0, 0 points. The analytics were brutal. Even being down that much, Atlanta was still given a 70% chance to win the game at home. That's how rare it is for a team to come back from 12-0. That's how much probability favored the Dream in that moment. Yet here we are, the Dream never recovered, not once. They didn't take a lead for a single second in that entire game, not one moment, not even a brief flash where they were up by 1 or tied. They played 40 minutes of basketball and never ever led. Think about that, 40 minutes, 4 quarters, multiple opportunities to adjust, multiple chances to make a run, and they never took the lead. That's not about shooting poorly on an off night. That's not about a few bad breaks and unfortunate bounces. That's a fundamental breakdown of what basketball is supposed to be. When you get down 12-0 and never lead the rest of the game, you're not executing, you're not making adjustments. You're not competing at the level required to win in this league. And honestly, you're not even trying hard enough to care about the comeback until it's already too late. The lack of urgency is almost as damning as the poor play itself. Angel Reese at least deserves some credit for fighting in that game because unlike her teammates who seemed content to let things happen to them, Angel was actually trying to force the issue. She started the game going 1 for 6 from the field, completely out of rhythm. Looked like she couldn't hit water if she fell out of a boat, but she didn't pack it in, she didn't accept defeat, she stayed aggressive. She got to the free throw line, she fought her way back and hit 3 of her next 4 shots. That's effort. That's a player who understands the moment and refuses to completely check out even when things are going wrong. And this is a big but effort alone doesn't win basketball games. Not when your 2 supposed star guards can't find any consistency on either end of the floor. Not when the fundamental execution isn't there.
Like, since the Fever game, Allisha Gray is shooting like 33% from the field over the last 4. Rhyne Howard clearly is the best of these guards, clearly. But even if you look at her game logs, she had 9 points on 16 shots against the Vols. Like, it is, it's bad. It is really, really bad if you are a fan of the Atlanta Dream because you just can't seem to string things together. And that's the problem when you have Rhyne Howard and Allisha Gray, especially Rhyne Howard as your star, is that there is inconsistencies there. There are major inconsistencies.
This brings us to the backcourt situation, which is becoming the biggest problem on this team. Rhyne Howard and Allisha Gray are supposed to be the dynamic duo, the foundation of the offense, the players who make everything else work, except here's the thing that nobody wants to say out loud. It's become incredibly, almost bizarrely rare to see both of them play well in the same game. One of them has a good night while the other disappears. Or more often, they both completely struggle together and the whole team suffers as a result. You can't build a championship offense around a backcourt where you can never count on both guards showing up on the same night. Look at Allisha Gray's shooting numbers from the recent stretch. She's gone 3 for 10, then 5 for 13, then a few more games in that same range. Since that second game against Indiana, she's shooting 33% from the field over a 4-game span. That's not a temporary slump that's going to correct itself in the next week. That's a crisis for someone who's supposed to be your secondary scoring option. When your second best perimeter player is missing 2 out of every 3 shots, you're not beating anybody. You're especially not beating the teams that matter in the playoffs, the teams with elite defenses, the teams that punish inefficiency. Gray was supposed to provide that veteran scoring punch, that reliable second option when Howard gets doubled or faces defensive pressure. Instead, she's become a liability on offense. Her presence on the court doesn't scare opposing defenses anymore. Defenders aren't waking up worried about Allisha Gray, they're just guarding her straight up and daring her to beat them. And lately she hasn't been. That confidence is gone, that rhythm is gone. And when the second best option on your team loses confidence, the entire offense suffers. Rhyne Howard, to her credit, has been better than Gray. There's no question that Howard is the better player between the two. She's clearly the best player in that backcourt, the most athletic, the most versatile on defense. But even Howard has these inexplicable disappearing acts where she just vanishes from games when her team needs her most. There's a game where she scored 9 points on 16 shots against Las Vegas, 9 points on 16 attempts. That's 56% of her shots not going in. When your best guard needs 16 attempts just to score 9 points, you're not competing for a championship. You're struggling to stay competitive in regular season games against quality opponents. And here's what makes it even worse. The pattern is becoming undeniable. Howard and Gray simply can't both be reliable in the same game. One feeds while the other starves. It's like they're taking turns being invisible. One night Howard carries the load while Gray goes 2 for 8. The next night Gray gets aggressive while Howard struggles. But there's almost never a night where both are clicking and making life easy for their teammates. That's not a coincidence. That's not bad luck. That's a fundamental compatibility issue with how these two are built to play the game.
3 are the biggest reasons why they're losing right now. Like, they just are. They're too inconsistent. Again, the one thing is always going to be consistent from Angel is their effort. Like, Angel's effort is going to be consistent, and that's a big thing. Like, when you are going to outwork your opponent nearly every time you set foot on the floor, that is a big thing. And with Rhyne, you've always got the defense. You've always got the defense from Rhyne. But I'm going to be real here. While you've always got the defense with Rhyne, the offense...
Now let's talk about Angel Reese, because the narrative around her is getting twisted in a way that's not entirely fair, but also not entirely wrong. She gets credit for her effort, that's deserved. She's going to outwork nearly everybody on the floor every single night. Her rebounding numbers are elite. Her relentlessness on defense is real. You can't question her motor or her willingness to compete. But here's the uncomfortable truth that the team's front office has to confront. She hasn't shot above 40% from the field since that second game against Indiana. Check her recent shooting lines and you'll see exactly what I mean. 4 for 13, 3 for 12, 4 for 11, 4 for 10. Those aren't numbers that suggest a player just having one bad game. Those are numbers that suggest inconsistency at the rim, poor shot selection, or both. She's getting to the free throw line, which is great, which shows she's being aggressive and attacking. But then she's missing free throws she should be making. In one recent game against Las Vegas, she went 4 for 9 from the free throw line in a game Atlanta lost by 11 points. 4 for 9. Those 5 missed free throws, that's the difference between a competitive loss and getting blown out. That's the type of execution that separates playoff teams from pretenders. That's the type of detail that decides series in the postseason. And here's where it gets really damning. In one of their recent blowout losses, Angel had just 4 points heading into the fourth quarter while her team was down 25 points. Down 25. She was completely invisible when her team needed any kind of spark to make a statement. Then when the game was already decided, when the outcome was no longer in question, she came back in the game and padded her statistics to get closer to a double-double. Meanwhile, the bench unit led by players like Ariel Powers and Monique Billings were actually fighting. They were making plays, they were making the game competitive. They were the ones who looked like they cared about winning the game, not just putting up numbers. This isn't a criticism of Angel's effort, nobody doubts her motor, but it's pointing out a harsh reality that this team's front office needs to face. The big three of Howard, Gray, and Reese are actually the biggest reason this team is losing right now. Not because they lack talent, but because they're too inconsistent. They don't show up in the same game, and when you're supposed to be building a championship core around 3 players and those 3 players can't reliably perform at the same time, you've got a major problem. A problem that can't be fixed with late-game adjustments or better bench production. Here's what people don't want to admit about Angel. Her effort is consistent. That's the one thing you can always count on. When she steps foot on the floor, she's going to outwork her opponent nearly every single time. That's a valuable trait, but with Rhyne Howard, you've got the defense. You've always got solid defense from Howard, and that's another valuable trait. But here's the thing, defense and effort don't score points. Efficiency scores points. Consistency scores points. And right now, neither of those things is happening from any of the 3 stars on a reliable basis. This is a team that's built on 3 inconsistent players trying to carry the load, and that's simply not sustainable at the highest level of competition.
The fact is, again, they are... like, this team has got insanely good. They're going to be insanely good in a couple of years. But yeah, look, it is... it's one of those things where this Atlanta Dream team, their window for winning a title is short. It's really short, as in, if Angel Reese makes an all-WNBA team, which she might, their window for winning a title is this year. Because if Angel Reese makes an all-WNBA team, you have to trade somebody. Because Angel Reese is max eligible, which means you're going to have to trade not 1, but probably 2 players. You're probably going to have to trade Bree Jones, obviously, but then you're going to have to find a way to get off a first-round pick salary. Like, if Angel makes an all-W team, I cannot stress this enough, their window closes after this year.
This brings us to one of the most shocking failures of the season. The Atlanta Dream were supposed to have an elite defense. That was supposed to be their identity. That was supposed to be what they built this team around. The foundation. Rhyne Howard is a legitimate defensive stopper when she's locked in. She can guard multiple positions. She has the athleticism and the length to make life difficult for opposing guards and wings. Angel Reese brings relentless effort and elite rebounding on that end of the floor. Together, they should anchor a top 5 defensive team in the WNBA, but instead they're wildly inconsistent. One night they look like they belong on an elite defensive unit. The next night, they're giving up 108 points to Indiana, then 113 in the rematch. Those Fever games are particularly embarrassing because Indiana is legitimately not a good offensive team. They're young, they're inexperienced, they're prone to extended scoring droughts where they look completely lost. They struggle to create offense on their own. For Atlanta to surrender over 100 points in back-to-back games against them is unacceptable. It's not like they were playing a well-oiled offense with 4 all-stars. They were playing a young team that's still figuring out how to play together, and they got torched twice. That suggests a fundamental problem with effort, discipline, or coaching. The Seattle game perfectly encapsulates the defensive problems. Ezi Magbigger went off for 21 points on 8 for 9 shooting. 8 for 9, that's not a fluke. That's not a player having the game of her life on a random Tuesday. That's a team that decided they weren't going to guard the paint. Magbigger got whatever she wanted whenever she wanted it. The dream basically said without words, go ahead and score at will. And Magbigger accepted the invitation. When one player is shooting 8 for 9, that's not a personal defensive failure. That's a scheme problem. That's a team that's not executing a game plan. That's a fundamental coaching issue where the adjustments aren't being made in real time. The Dream had opportunities to double, to send help, to make life difficult for Magbigger. They did none of those things. She had an open look almost every single time she touched the ball in the paint. That's not personnel. That's not talent. That's effort and discipline, and both were missing. When a big man can shoot 8 for 9, you're either not trying to defend the paint or you're not capable of defending it. Either way, that's a major red flag about this team's commitment to the defensive end.
Is that their window closes the day Angel Reese gets off a rookie deal, because they're already at the end of their salary and they're all on long-term deals. It's not like, say, the Fever, where Kelsey's on a short-term deal where they can afford Kate. Like, Angel might be a year in Atlanta. And things don't work out, or teams are looking for assets to attach to Bree Jones. There's a world where they fucking trade Angel after this year. Like, if things don't work out. So the Dream are in this weird situation where, as good as things look now, this is a team that could be fucked by their contracts.
So we've established that the Dream are losing right now because of inconsistent play from their 3 stars, defensive breakdowns that shouldn't be happening, and an inability to execute against teams with even moderate offensive weapons. Those are fixable problems in a lot of ways. Coaching adjustments can address some of them. More practice time can help with execution. But there's one problem that isn't fixable. There's one issue that's about to blow up in the Dream's face and potentially close their championship window before it even really opens. It's the contract situation, and it's already lurking in the background waiting to devastate this franchise. Angel Reese is going to make an all-WNBA team this year. Maybe not first team, probably not first team, but second team or third team, absolutely. Her rebounding numbers alone guarantee it. She's averaging a double-double as a rookie. She's been one of the most impactful players on her team despite the inconsistencies. That production level is all WNBA worthy. The moment she makes that team, she becomes max contract eligible. The Dream are going to have to offer her that max deal. They don't have a choice in this matter. If they don't offer it, another team will fight tooth and nail for her the moment she hits restricted free agency. You don't let a 22-year-old double-double machine walk away over money. That's how you blow up a franchise and set yourself back years. But here's where it gets complicated, and here's why this season is so critical to Atlanta's future. Atlanta is already at the salary cap. They're not over it, but they're at it. Rhyne Howard is making starter money on a multi-year deal. Allisha Gray just signed an extension. Tina Charles is on the books earning veteran salary. When you add up all those contracts plus the rest of the roster, there is literally no room for a max deal. None, zero. So what has to happen? Tina Charles gets traded. That's obvious. She's on an expiring deal. She's 35 years old. While she's still a productive player, she's not part of the long-term future. She's a veteran presence for this season, nothing more. Moving her clears space, but it's not enough. The Dream will also need to move at least 1, possibly 2 first-round pick salaries. Those rookie contracts might seem small on the surface, but when you're trying to squeeze a max deal under a salary cap ceiling, every single dollar matters. Every $1,000 counts. That means trading away young talent and future assets just to keep the core together for 1 more year. That means sacrificing draft capital that could be used to improve the team in other ways. That means mortgaging the future to pay for today. And here's the really scary part that keeps the front office awake at night. What if it doesn't work? What if they make all these moves, commit to this core, trade away their future assets, and still can't get past the second round in the playoffs? Then they're locked into a mediocre team with no cap flexibility and no draft capital to improve. That's organizational purgatory. That's a team stuck in the middle, not bad enough to tank, not good enough to compete, unable to make moves because there's no financial flexibility left. There's a very real possibility that Atlanta's front office is already having internal discussions about whether this core is worth building around long term. If Angel makes all WNBA and demands a max deal, do you give it to her knowing it hamstrings the entire franchise for potentially the next 4 or 5 years? Or do you explore trade options while her value is at its peak? Do you try to get assets back and reset? Imagine this scenario actually happening. A team like Las Vegas or Seattle calls Dream Management and offers a package built around taking Tina Charles's contract off your hands, giving back a quality starting player in return, and including future draft picks to make the deal more attractive. Do you take it? Do you break up the core after one season together because the salary cap math doesn't work? Most teams would say no. You don't trade away a 22-year-old all-WNBA caliber player if you can avoid it. But most teams aren't facing Atlanta's specific salary cap situation. Most teams have more flexibility built into their contracts. Most teams didn't blow their cap space by signing Tina Charles to that deal. The Dream might be forced into a decision they absolutely do not want to make simply because the WNBA's salary structure doesn't allow them any other viable options. And that's the genuine tragedy here. A team loaded with talent might have to blow itself up because of financial constraints, not because of poor play or lack of potential. Let's compare this to what the Indiana Fever have going on right now because that comparison is absolutely crucial to understanding why Atlanta is in such trouble. The Fever have Caitlin Clark on a rookie deal. She's not becoming a free agent anytime soon. She's locked in. They've got Aaliyah Boston on a rookie deal. Same situation. These two are going to be underpaid relative to their production for years. Kelsey Mitchell is on a shorter-term contract that gives them options. If things don't work out, if the core doesn't mesh, if injuries derail the season, Indiana can make moves without completely blowing up their roster. They have flexibility, they have room to maneuver, they can adjust on the fly based on how things develop. Atlanta doesn't have that luxury, that's the fundamental difference. Once Angel signs that max extension, if the Dream even offer it, she's locked into this franchise. You can't trade her without destroying team morale and fan support. You can't move Rhyne Howard or Allisha Gray without basically admitting that the entire rebuild was a failure and starting over from scratch. They're committed to this core, and if it doesn't work, they're stuck with it for years. That's a franchise in handcuffs. That's an organization with its hands tied behind its back, unable to make the moves necessary to improve the team or fix mistakes. This is why this season is so critical to Atlanta's future. This might genuinely be their best chance to make noise in the playoffs. Next year, they could be gutting the roster just to make salaries fit. The year after that, they could be a completely different team that looks nothing like what they are right now. The window is now. It's not next year, it's not in 2 years, it's this year. And right now, they're currently sitting at 3 straight losses with no answers on either end of the floor. There's even a realistic scenario where the Atlanta front office has to seriously consider trading Angel Reese after this season if things continue to deteriorate. If teams come calling with offers that include taking on Tina Charles's contract plus additional assets to sweeten the deal, the Dream decision makers have to at least listen. Because the alternative is being trapped in salary cap hell with a core that can't get past the second round, can't win games against legitimate competition, and is locked into massive contracts that prevent any meaningful improvements. That's a nightmare scenario. That's organizational death by 1,000 cuts. Let's break down exactly what's happening here and why it matters so much for the future of this franchise. The Atlanta Dream entered this season with legitimate championship aspirations. They weren't just hoping to make the playoffs. They weren't thinking about development and growth for next year. They went out and added Angel Reese, the most dominant rebounder in women's college basketball, a generational talent in terms of rebounding and motor. They had Rhyne Howard entering her 3rd year and looking like a future all-star candidate. Allisha Gray provided veteran scoring and playoff experience that they desperately needed. On paper, this was a team built to compete immediately while also setting up long-term success. They had the pieces, they made the moves. The front office did what it was supposed to do. Instead, we're watching what can only be described as a slow-motion collapse. 3 straight losses where they couldn't break 75 points in 2 of those games. Defensive breakdowns happening against teams they should absolutely dominate. Offensive inconsistency from players who are supposed to be reliable and dependable. And most concerning of all, a complete inability to maintain leads or fight back from deficits when they're playing against any competition with an actual pulse. What makes this particularly frustrating for fans is that we've actually seen what this team is capable of doing when they're clicking on all cylinders. Those 2 wins against Indiana showed their potential. They put up 108 and 113 points. They looked like an offensive juggernaut that could score with anybody. Rhyne Howard was aggressive and attacking the paint with purpose. Allisha Gray was hitting shots with confidence. Angel Reese was dominating the glass and finishing around the rim with efficiency. The team looked cohesive. The big 3 were all performing, the offense was clicking, but here's the problem that's becoming impossible to ignore. Those Fever wins are starting to look like outliers rather than the norm. They're not representative of what this team actually is. Indiana completely collapsed in both games. They turned the ball over repeatedly. They couldn't execute down the stretch. They made terrible decisions. The Fever basically handed Atlanta those victories. The Dream didn't so much win those games as Indiana lost them. And when you look at Atlanta's body of work against actually competent teams with any kind of offensive firepower, the picture gets much darker, much more concerning. The Dallas Wings are a middling team at best, and even they've had success against Atlanta at times. The Las Vegas Aces exposed them systematically. Seattle just beat them convincingly. The Las Vegas game was particularly telling because it showed exactly what happens when the Dream face a well-coached team with multiple scoring options and a defined system. They get picked apart methodically. They can't stay disciplined defensively. They can't execute their offense consistently. They look lost. Now let's talk about something that most people are completely ignoring or not understanding the implications of. The Atlanta Dream's championship window might be slamming shut after this season, not in 3 years when they hope to be more experienced, not in 2 years when they think the core will have more chemistry together. This year might be it. This might be their only real shot. Here's why. Angel Reese is max contract eligible after this season ends. If she makes an all-WNBA team, which she legitimately has a good shot at making given her rebounding numbers and overall impact on winning, she becomes eligible for a supermax deal. The moment she gets offered that kind of money, Atlanta has a massive problem. They're already at the salary cap ceiling. There's no room. Rhyne Howard is on a long-term deal. Allisha Gray just signed an extension. Tina Charles is on the books. If Angel gets maxed out, the Dream have to move multiple players just to make the salary cap math work. They'll need to trade Tina Charles, obviously, that clears some space. But that alone isn't enough. They'll also need to dump at least one first-round pick salary, maybe two, just to create enough cap space for Angel's extension. Think about what that actually means in practice. This core group of Howard, Gray, and Reese might only have one season together, one single season. And they're currently blowing it by losing to Seattle and barely staying ahead of Indiana in the standings. They're completely wasting their only window together by not performing at a championship level. Here's a scenario that's becoming more realistic. The Atlanta front office is sitting in a room. Angel Reese has made all WNBA. She's eligible for the max. Teams are already calling asking about her availability. The Dream have to decide. Do they max her out knowing it will require trading away multiple players and future draft capital just to fit her under the cap? Or do they listen to offers from other teams? Do they get assets back? Do they reset the timeline? If the team continues to lose, if they don't look like legitimate contenders, if the big three continue to struggle with consistency, there's a world where the Dream might actually trade Angel after this year, if things continue to deteriorate. If teams are looking for young talent to attach to other assets, if the math simply doesn't work financially, that's the nightmare scenario for a franchise that just added what they thought was a generational talent. So the Dream are in this weird, uncomfortable situation where, as good as things might look on the surface right now, this is a team that could be completely dismantled by their own contracts in the offseason. One of the most talented rosters in women's basketball could be torn apart not because of poor talent evaluation, but because of salary cap incompetence and bad contract structuring. Let me tell you exactly what needs to happen for this team to salvage the season and actually compete for a championship. First, Rhyne Howard and Allisha Gray need to play well in the same game, not occasionally, not 1 out of every 4 games, consistently. They're the engine of this offense. They're the foundation of why this team should be able to score with anybody. When they sputter together, which is happening too often, everything breaks down. They need to find a way to both be aggressive on the same night. Both be efficient, both be creating for their teammates. If one guard plays well while the other disappears, the other team just focuses all their defensive effort on the one who's playing well and shuts it down. Second, Angel Reese needs to improve her efficiency around the basket. The effort is absolutely there. The rebounding is elite. But 4 for 13 shooting is not going to cut it against playoff-caliber defenses. She needs to finish stronger around the rim. She needs to be more selective about which shots she's taking. Maybe she needs to hit more than 50% from the free throw line so those misses don't cost the team close games. Maybe she needs better positioning in the post so she's not settling for contested looks. Those are skill development things that can be worked on in practice. Third, the defense needs an actual identity. Are they switching everything? Are they protecting the paint? Are they pressuring ball handlers and forcing turnovers? Right now, it feels like they're doing none of those things consistently. One game they're switching. The next game they're trying to protect the paint. The next game they're just standing around watching. That inconsistency is killing them. They need to pick a defensive scheme that works for their personnel and commit to it every single night. When Ezzie Magbiger goes 8 for 9, that's the coaching staff's responsibility. When they give up 100+ to Indiana twice, that's the coaching staff's responsibility. They have to get on the same page about what defense they're playing. And finally, the coaching staff needs to figure out rotations that actually make sense and reflect what's happening in the game. When the bench unit is outplaying the starters, maybe leave them in longer instead of automatically bringing back the stars because of their names and contracts. When Angel is padding stats in garbage time with a 25-point deficit, maybe sit her and develop the young players instead of chasing a double-double that doesn't matter. When Allisha Gray is ice cold and hasn't hit a shot in 4 tries, maybe run more of the offense through Rhyne Howard instead of continuing to force her the ball. These seem like obvious adjustments, but we're not seeing them happen in real time. The talent is there, the potential is there, but potential doesn't win championships. Execution wins championships. Consistency wins championships. Making the right plays in crucial moments wins championships. And right now, Atlanta is failing in all those areas. Let me give you a prediction of how this season is going to play out if things don't change immediately. The Dream will make the playoffs as a mid-tier seed. They'll probably win a first-round series against a weaker opponent, maybe someone in the 7th or 8th seed that they can overpower if they show up ready to play. Then they'll run into a team like New York or Las Vegas in the second round and get bounced in 4 or 5 games. We'll watch them lose close games where they had opportunities but couldn't execute. We'll see one game where the big three finally play well together and they'll win big. And then we'll see 2 more games where that doesn't happen and they lose. That's been the pattern all season. The offseason becomes a referendum on whether this core is worth keeping together long term. Angel Reese gets her max offer. The Dream have to make painful cuts to accommodate it. Veterans get traded. First-round picks get moved. And next season, we're having the exact same conversation about inconsistency and wasted potential. This team had all the pieces to compete for a title this year. They just couldn't put it together when it actually mattered. Unless something changes dramatically in the next few weeks, that's the trajectory. That's where this is heading, and the saddest part of this entire situation is that it didn't have to be this way. This team had literally everything they needed to compete for a title right now. They had elite rebounding potential, they had defensive talent, they had multiple scoring options, they had veteran leadership. They just couldn't put it together when the games actually counted. They couldn't execute down the stretch. They couldn't maintain leads. They couldn't adjust when other teams exploited their weaknesses. But here's what I want you to think about. What if Atlanta's front office is already in panic mode? What if they're already having conversations about trading Angel Reese? What if the Dream organization realizes that this core can't coexist and makes a blockbuster move in the offseason that shocks the entire league? That's not crazy. That's realistic given the salary cap constraints and the performance issues on the court. This team could look completely different next season. So here's my final question for you. If you're an Atlanta Dream fan, what are you feeling right now? Are you frustrated that a team with so much promise is wasting its opportunity? Are you disappointed that the big three can't seem to figure out how to be consistently good together? Are you starting to worry that the front office might blow this team up before it even has a real chance to compete? Or are you still optimistic that they'll figure this out and make a championship run? Whatever you're feeling, drop your thoughts in the comments because honestly, this team is either about to turn it around in the next week or 2, or they're about to watch their championship dreams slip away before they even really got started. And maybe, just maybe, they'll trade away the best talent they've added in years just to make the salary cap numbers work. That's the reality of sports business colliding with roster construction incompetence. Don't miss what happens next.